Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. This week, we're looking at important Jewish festivals and holidays and also at the times when they appear in the earthly life of Jesus. Today, we want to look at Passover, easily the most important festival of the Jewish year and the Jewish faith, and perhaps the only one that you're already pretty familiar with. I'm sure you know the story of how the Hebrew people were slaves in Egypt and how Moses was sent by God to deliver them. There were the 10 plagues, and for the last one, God promised to send the angel of death over the land, and the firstborn in every household would die. But the Hebrew people were told to sacrifice a lamb and to mark the doorposts and the lintels of their homes with some of the blood to be a sign for the angel. And the angel would pass over or skip that house, and they would be spared. This whole thing led the Pharaoh to release them, and because they left so hurriedly, they didn't have time for their bread to rise. And so they made, took, and ate bread that was unleavened. Then God parted the waters and made a way for them to cross the sea and save them from the pursuing Egyptians. Then in a pillar of smoke and fire, God continued to lead them. And God provided manna and quail to eat and water from a rock. God gave them the 10 Commandments and more, leading them toward the promised land. For Jews, this is the key moment when God acted to save God's people. If you wanted to know whether God had actually ever entered into human history and acted to save them, the Jews would answer yes, right here. They remembered God's act of salvation every year by a special meal called the Passover meal or a Seder, with special foods including lamb and unleavened bread and special cups of wine to drink and more. Each of the foods had special significance for remembering the story and meant different things. When Jesus celebrated the Last Supper with his disciples, they were celebrating the Passover meal. And as they remembered God's act to save God's people, Jesus gave them a new meal to celebrate and to remember how God was saving God's people anew. This time the sacrifice wasn't going to be a lamb, it was going to be the Lamb of God. And our new meal consists of unleavened bread and wine, Christ's body and blood. So when we take communion, we are participating in both, remembering both meals of salvation. It's a reminder of the Exodus, and it's new again in Jesus as God leads us out of our bondage to sin into freedom and new life in Him. In grace, God has acted to save and redeem God's people. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.